recovery, a boost for the labour market? In the interview, the chairman of Germany's federal labour agency, Frank-Jürgen Weise.
Mr. Weise, you were a successful businessman for years. In 2004, you switched sides to head the Federal Labor Agency. Why? You could have made more money in your old job.
Yes, but my main focus at the Federal Labor Agency isn't about making money. It's a fascinating task for someone who's interested in organizational change. I've discovered how important my work is for our society. Unemployment still ranks among the 3 greatest concerns in people's lives.
While we're on the subject, the analysts are astounded. Unemployment is much lower than feared and economic recovery more rapid. Are we out of the woods, or is worse still yet to come?
We're still a bit skeptical. Structural changes in the economy have been accelerated by the crisis. For instance, from manufacturing to the service sector and from full-time to part-time work. We're happy that the crisis wasn't as bad as had been anticipated, but you have to accept that the government is still having to play a stabilizing role.
Some people are predicting that full employment is around the corner. Is that the result of successful labor policies, or is it a demographic development?
Unfortunately, it's true that demographic factors are playing a role. We expect to see some 100,000 fewer people joining the workforce than usually was the case. That's bound to help unemployment. I believe it's psychologically important that we talk about positive economic developments. But we're the Federal Labor Agency, and things just aren't that good here as in other areas.
If we assume that demographics mean more people will be leaving the workforce, when should we turn to immigration for help?
We ought to have been doing that for decades. It's assumed that we won't be able to solve the immediate acute problem of a lack of specialist qualified workers within 2 to 3 years. And it's arrogant to think that there are well-qualified workers around Europe waiting with their bags packed to come to Germany. No, we fear that the conditions for targeted immigration aren't so good and will therefore suffer from a lack of specialist qualified staff.
Despite all the optimistic numbers, it's also clear that very many jobs are temporary posts, limited contracts. Is that a problem?
Well, very many is relative. Temporary work makes up 2% of the labor market. In other European countries, that figure has been 4% for years now. Admittedly, we used to be at 1%. So all these statements are true. Temporary work is on the increase, but businesses seem to have their reasons for that. The volume isn't inordinately high, but wage bargaining partners will have to keep an eye on developments.
A new study says more than 20% of the workforce, that's 6 million people, earn far less than 10 euros an hour, many less than 5 euros. Do we need a minimum wage?
That's best solved in wage negotiations. What's a healthy supply situation? What's necessary in terms of demand? And let's be honest, as customers, we are also involved. We can decide to buy the cheapest products regardless of where they're from, or instead, we can opt for good quality products, environmentally sound and ecologically responsible. As a businessman, I've seen prices dictated by my customers and the market. So I don't believe there's some sort of evil intent to pay poorly, but that can arise as a result of market forces. If that goes too far, then the state does have to intervene.
Mr. Weise, you have a second job. Defense Minister Karl Theodor zu Guttenberg has asked you to head a committee to reform the armed forces. but it's hardly packed with military men. How qualified are you and your colleagues for the task?
Qualifiziert Sie und Ihre Mitglieder da eigentlich für diese Aufgabe?
Also ich finde es sehr schön für die Bundesagentur.
Well, I see it as a great compliment for the Federal Labor Agency. Recognition that what's been achieved by my colleagues in the Administrative Board does seem to set an interesting example for other areas where the state is active. That's real recognition, and that's why I'm playing an active role. The other thing is that the Bundeswehr is very important for me. I think Defense Minister Gutenberg has an open, honest, relaxed attitude to this topic. And it's good that we don't find military knowledge and experience at the forefront here, but rather the civilians. You might say I'm on both sides, both as a soldier and as a citizen.
Nun heißt es ja,
now there's talk that you might favor a voluntary military service. Isn't that a contradiction in terms, a duty that's voluntary?
That would be contradictory. I very much favor an army with close ties to the people, where a constant exchange takes place, and the army is controlled by responsible citizens. So I'm actually against a completely professional force. The other side of the coin is military service and justice isn't being done when only 16% of young men fulfill that duty. The Commission is trying to square that circle, and I'm confident that we'll develop some interesting proposals.
Do you agree with many advocates of military service that it leads to a more intelligent and cheaper army than a professional one?
Und billiger als eine Berufsarmee?
More intelligent would be unfair. You'd have to investigate who's involved. The other aspect is that we have lots of soldiers who've signed up for 2, 4, 6, or 12 years, as I did. As a result, there's an important exchange with the population. I'm skeptical about a career army where a 20-year-old signs up to be a soldier for the rest of his life.
Als 20-Jähriger entscheidet, sein Leben lang Soldat zu sein. Da bleibt meine Skepsis.
We
keep hearing from the defense minister that the current model based on military service isn't appropriate for the challenges the Bundeswehr is facing in its international operations. There is much talk of an intervention force. For that, you really don't want conscripts. Isn't an intervention force diametrically opposite to what a majority of the population actually wants to see?
Also im Moment gilt ja auch, ich sage mal, der Verfassungsauftrag.
At the moment, the armed forces have a constitutional responsibility, and that's defense. And you shouldn't forget that Germany today is surrounded by allies. There are other countries in NATO who don't have allies on their borders. I can't say whether they're hostile, but our army is in an alliance, so we must perform two functions. Missions, as and when the Parliament sees fit, as well as the main responsibility of defense. I think our military structure has served us well so far. A reduction of military service from 6 to 9 months throws up completely new questions, and we're trying to answer those. We don't yet have any final conclusions to offer you, but the minister himself will be doing exactly that this autumn.
Kann ich zugegebenermaßen noch nicht bringen, sondern das wird dann der Minister im Herbst sagen.
Mr. Weise, thank you.
Bitte schön.